Okay. So, moving up to our next presenter, we have Shagnik Bhattacharya from History Honors Second Year DCAC. Shagnik will be elucidating us on the topic the Somnath Expedition by Sultan Muhammad of Ghazni. He will be scouting us on the greatest feat of military adventures of that time, which are still in political controversy in modern India. We will also be scrutinizing the role of possible players and events involved in the most perceived Hindu trauma inflicted by Muslim invasions. Shagnik, please.
Yeah, thank you, Ria. So, my topic, as you know, is Somnath expedition of Sultan Mahmud of Ghazni. As a part of this topic, I want to underline mainly that there have been many moments in Indian history which have shaped the past as we know it to be. But the Ghaznavid invasion, northwestern part of the Indian subcontinent, was one such event. The Somnath expedition, in particular, was one of the greatest military adventures and continues to be a source of political controversy in modern India due to largely the false belief of it being seen as an Islamic invasion and as a resulting period for the period of trauma for the Hindu people. Through this paper, it is my aim to deconstruct such myths and have a closer look at the characters and events involved with Somnath expedition. So first of all, let us see what the background was like. By 1025, Sultan Mahmud had carried out raids and plundered widely across North India, including places like Mathura and Kannauj. Sultan Mahmud's military strategy revolved around swift maneuvering and implementing shock tactics, which involves cavalry and enemy forces on the enemy forces, as well as putting full focus on maximizing plunder and not usually on territorial conquest. This is a very important part about his strategy. He usually did not used to fight for territorial conquest, only for plundering. uh, Ferishta, the medieval historian from the 16th century, had described Somnath as a place of the people of Hind, believing their soul, where the people of Hind believed their souls went upon death, from where they were assigned to a new body by God. The divine importance of the place still continues to this day. And although the fact that it existed for at least a century before the Ghaznavid invasion came is supported by local inscriptions, which mention royal pilgrims visiting the temple in the late 10th or early 11th centuries. And Al Biruni has also mentioned about the temple. Besides, the temple may have originated as a structure named Prabhasapatana, which over time evolved into the Somnath temple as it became when it was raided by Mahmud Ghazni. The wealth of Somnath temple was exemplary, and this needs to be pointed out. It had been endowed with about 10,000 villages by various princes for the purposes of its upkeep, apart from all the generous donations received from millions of pilgrims from all over the subcontinent over time. Its staff reportedly consisted of about 1,000 Brahmins for worship of the deity, 500 singing and dancing girls, 200 musicians, and 300 barbers. The temple was a spacious edifice and its roof was supported by 56 ornamented columns. The idol was made entirely of stone and it was a shivling and was kept in a fairly dark garbhagriha with where the only sources of light were lamps hanging from the ceilings which were covered with gems, so they reflected the color of whatever gems they were covered with. The next part of my paper deals with uh, how the entire expedition took place, how originating from Multan and then ending in Somnath, how the entire expedition took place with all the with entire mention of the routes taken by Sultan Mahmud and his Ghaznavid forces, with all the battles that took place in the way, and all that happened when they finally reached Somnath, and then whatever happened. Now, here, due to time constraint, I am not going to tell everything in detail, whichever I have uh, mentioned here. I will straight be skipping on to the aftermath of what happened and to what had happened after Mahmud left Somnath. So now, there is a claim. Traditionally, what we believe is that Somnath came to no, I mean, Mahmud of Ghazni came to Somnath. He destroyed the entire town. He destroyed the temple, and he plundered, and he went away. And it devastated the local economy, and it was seen as trauma on the local population. Now, what really happened? We have ample evidence available to suggest that the ruins that are claimed to be that of the original Somnath temple may or may not be correct. It can be argued that descriptions of the original temple that we have from the chronicles of medieval historians simply do not match with the one identified as the ruins of the original temple. Both Muhammad Nazim and Muhammad Habib, these two historians, have suggested two different possible sites for the original temple where the original temple might have stood. So this is one thing. Then we have the very nasty role played by the British here. Uh, Over time, a highly communal interpretation of the history of Somnath campaign surfaced as we know it today. It's a very communal and controversial issue today. The British, what they did, they depicted the Ghaznavid invasion as an event of trauma for the entire Hindu population in India by overly emphasizing on triumphalist accounts in Turco-Persian sources and ignoring the local Sanskrit and Jain textual and inscriptional sources, which barely even mention the Ghaznavid raid at best and present a completely different picture of the society. Because it helped them to, why did British do so? It was because it helped them to divide and rule a culturally and economically rich subcontinent on communal lines. British imperialist historians, following methodology laid out by James Mill in his 1806 book, History of British India. As we know, in that book, James Mill had pointed out three categorizations of Indian history as Hindu, Muslim, and British. So he was providing, so this kind of communal categorization and prevailed, and it stressed on the theory of permanent and perpetual confrontation between Hindu and Muslim communities, and succeeded in reimagining and largely fabricating a deeply divisive, mutually agonistic, and profoundly religion based past, which came to be accepted and eventually crystallized as a part of Indian history. This has been a very unfortunate development, and it has unpleasant consequences to this day, including not only partition of India but also the demolition of Babar Masjid and all such issues that are taking place today. They the sources in this communalist interpretation of history. Now, it can be said that the British used this kind of communalist history um, because such a interpretation, because it was the truth and it was only existing, and that's why they could exploit it. Now that is not the case. uh, the Ghaznavid Sultan's plundering of the temple caused minimal or insignificant damage. First of all, this is important to see because it is corroborated by two pieces of evidence. First one is an inscription issued by a Kadamba king of modern day Goa in 1038. The inscription records the royal patron's pilgrimage to Somnath by sea, and he does not mention any kind of destruction that took place here. And even if destruction had taken place, there would have been some mention of renovation. No kind of such, no, and no, nothing of this sort was found mentioned in that inscription. Further, there is another piece of evidence. It was an inscription issued by Somnath Temple Authority in 1169, and it refers to the renovation of the temple under the initiative of the king Kumar Pal for both mythological and practical reasons, but it underlines the reason for renovation as the dilapidation caused by time, which they also term Kalajirnam, not due to any kind of plunder or any kind of destruction that had been caused to the temple. Uh, Apart from that, there is, as I said, there is a prevalent belief that it led to the devastation of local economy. Quite to the contrary to that, the period from AD 1000 to 1300 actually saw an upward swing of economy in Gujarat, and this is largely corroborated by local sources only. And it is possible that the triumphalist sources, in order to show the triumph of their patron and in order to gain the patronage from Mahmud, they just wrote whatever they felt like and wrote whatever was helpful to their cause, which might not have been the truth. Just as an example, the historian Farooqi, who had accompanied Mahmud in his campaigns, was rewarded with an elephant load of gold by Sultan Mahmud. And this has been mentioned, in relation to the to Farooqi's writing just a kashida, which is a sort of poem for dedicated to Mahmud Ghazni. So it is quite possible that the triumphalist sources not only had the truth hidden, but they also presented wrong truths, which were not correct.
10 minutes up,
And
Shagnik.
yeah, okay, please, just a few more minutes. In contrast to what has been in contrast to what has been given in Turco-Persian sources, especially in case of Al-Biruni's account of devastation, thus there was nothing like that, and there was an extensive trade of especially of the western coast of India with West Asia and also with Mediterranean, with the Chalukya rulers always bent upon improving the systems of irrigation for improving agriculture. So it cannot be said at all that there was any kind of what should I say, devastation of local economy. Even if there was devastation, it was not long term and not at all that it had not at all the or not on the scale which has been presented in history. Furthermore, uh, there also has existed that idea of perpetual and permanent tension between Hindus and Muslims. That was not the case because we have evidence of Muslim communities such as Khojas, Bohras, and Ismailis living in large numbers in Gujarat who amicably coexisted with local Jainas and Hindus, and even going as far as to adopt Vaishnav elements and traditions in their own religious practices. Apart
Shagnik, I
from
would
that,
like you to please conclude quickly because people have to answer
yeah,
the questions.
yeah. Just 2 minutes. Okay. Even Mahmud was not the kind of religious zealot that he's believed to be, because the coins that were Ghaznavid coins that were minted in Lahore were bilingually stamped in Sanskrit and Arabic, even going as far as to proclaim Prophet Muhammad as an avatar of Allah, which is in itself a Vaishnavic concept. Apart from that, the Ghaznavid armies too tended to be multi-ethnic at all times and included men of various religious affiliations. Okay, so it not only consisted of Turks, but there were Arabs, Afghans, Dalamite, Khurasanis, Ghuris, and even Indians, especially Punjabi Hindus. So it cannot be said to be an Islamic invasion as it has been portrayed. Then we have the very important role of Romila Thapar in this in this regard. She has stressed specifically on the need to see the wider socio-economic context of Ghaznavid Empire in order to think about the motives for Ghaznavid raids into India. She argues that as the capital city of his empire, Mahmud Ghazni was under direct cultural and economic competition with Baghdad, Cairo, Samarkand, and Bukhara. As such, the constant need for increasing and replenishing the treasury could certainly be considered to be a vital factor in motivating Sultan to pillage and plunder unceasingly. Not only that, looting and pillage was a culturally sanctioned norm among the Turkish tribes, and hence Ghaznavid raids were nothing out of the ordinary at the time, except maybe the amount of risk and reward involved for the raiders. Sultan Mahmud certainly was celebrated as the hero of Islam for his desecration of Somnath temple and destruction of its idol, but it cannot definitely be said that achieving this objective could not have been the main motive for him, because additionally, the chroniclers who glorified Mahmud as a hero of Islam had personal motives for doing so, as I had just given the example of
Thank you
Farooqi.
so much,
We should,
Shagnik, for
okay, no, no, okay, 30
deconstructing.
seconds, 30 seconds, please, Riya, aisa mat karo. Okay, we should also not ignore the fact that Ghazni's position was not necessarily a stable one, being surrounded by enemies from all sides. Now, to conclude it all, there is also an existing myth that the temple of Somnath was completely destroyed and a mosque was built in its place. Archaeological evidence has proved that to be false, and it is now proved that it was not until 1655 that the Somnath temple was destroyed at the orders of Aurangzeb, not Mahmud of Ghazni, and later replaced by a mosque. Thank you. That's all. Any questions?
Thank you, Shagni, for deconstructing the myths, providing us a more clear perception of the expedition, as well as giving us a closer look of the periods and circumstances that molded the communal past of India. I would like to ask the audience if they have any question, they can just quickly ask him.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions to Shagnik. Uh, Shagnik, it was a good presentation, though I think that you excessively relied on the interpretations of Romila Thapar as the authentic source
Not
of.
really. I could not present my entire paper
No, 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 no. Alright,
because of the
that is
time
just
constraint.
that is just a general observation,
Okay.
that I would like to make, considering the fact that the dualities within your narrative of when you try to push forward the narrative that it was not an invasion, right? It was something that was done out of political exigencies, right? Like it was simply a Turkic tradition to go and plunder foreign territories. All right. I think you haven't referred to the Abu inscriptions of the Solankis. I don't know whether you have the knowledge about the Solanki rulers of the Patan, right? Who were the rulers during the period of Ghaznavid invasion, and
Bhima the first.
basically,
Yeah, I know.
uh, so if you have you referred to the inscription of Bhima one of Patan,
Yeah,
that is
yeah,
dated, right? That is dated to 1011 probably, right? where
yeah,
where he constantly mentions about the Ghaznavid raids and how they destroyed the whole temple, you know, up to the foundation, and
yeah,
even the deity was taken away. The deity was presupposedly covered in gold and gems, and it was taken away, right? And the Modhera Sun temple, was made in commemoration uh, to the to commemoration of the soldiers who defended the Somnath temple, and most
not,
important
not,
point.
not. I would like to correct you here. Not for those who had defended the Somnath temple, but for those who had fought at the Battle of Mathura. They were
Oh,
some tribes of
there,
Rajputs.
see, there was no battle at Modhera specifically. I don't know from where you are getting your source of information. There was no battle at Modhera because Modhera never existed, alright. So Modhera is 31 kilometers to the southeast of Patan, that is towards Mehsana, alright. And that region by that time was not urbanized, right? So Modhera came up as a new urban center in response to the devastation that happened at Somnath. All right. And the last point that I would like to make or to correct you is that you mentioned about the prevalence of the Daudi Bohras, the Bohra community in Gujarat, and you wanted to put forward the picture that it is a symbol of what we can say the assimilatory culture of the medieval India, where the communities can coexist. But the incoming of the Bohra community, the Bohras were those communities who were persecuted in Iran because they were Shias. All right, so they were a source of constant persecution even under the Sultanate of Gujarat. Right. So interestingly, they found in Hindus the natural allies, on whom they could have backed and oppose the Sultanate of Gujarat that emerged in the 15th, 16th century. So that was the intervention that I would like to make. Thanks.